The United States built the rocket that took humans to the moon. It built skyscrapers so tall they changed the skyline of every major city on Earth. And today, right now, nearly half of its roads are falling apart. Not in some developing country, not in some war zone. Here, on the roads your tax dollars are supposed to maintain. So the question isn't why can't we fix them, the question is why, with all of that capability, are we choosing not to? Here's the thing that surprises most people. The United States is not broke when it comes to infrastructure spending. We spend billions on roads every single year. The federal government, state governments, and local governments, they're all putting money into the system. And yet, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers, roughly 40% of US roads are currently in poor or mediocre condition. 40%. That's not a fringe problem. That's nearly half the road network in this country deteriorating beneath your tires right now. So if the money is going in, why are roads still falling apart? Well, the answer involves a funding mechanism so outdated that most economists think it should have been replaced 20 years ago. But before we get there, you need to see what this actually looks like on the ground. Consider corridors like Interstate 10 in Louisiana, one of the busiest freight routes in the country. For years, sections of highways like this have ranked among the worst for surface conditions, with heavy truck traffic accelerating the damage. Repairs often get delayed, not because the problems aren't known, but because funding, planning, and prioritization don't always align. And by the time work finally begins, what could have been a simple resurfacing job has often turned into a far more expensive reconstruction. That's not a Louisiana problem, that's the American road problem, playing out in one place. And it starts with a number so large it's almost hard to believe it's real. The United States faces a $684 billion road funding gap over the next decade. That's not a rounding error. That's not a budget miscalculation. That's a structural, systematic shortfall baked into the way we fund roads at every level of government. And here's where that outdated funding mechanism comes in. The primary source of federal road funding, the federal gas tax, hasn't been raised since 1993. Not once. For over 30 years, the federal gas tax has sat at 18.4 cents per gallon, while the cost of construction materials, labor, and equipment has roughly doubled. Let's think about what that actually means. Every year that goes by, the same number of cents buys less and less actual road. Contractors charge more, steel costs more, asphalt costs more, but the revenue stream funding all of it is frozen in time, locked in at a rate set when the internet was still a novelty. That's part of why the money going in never matches the money we need. But it's only part of it, because what's happening at the state level makes the federal problem look manageable. States are responsible for maintaining the vast majority of road miles in this country, but maintenance, as a budget category, is deeply unglamorous. Nobody holds a ribbon-cutting ceremony to repave a stretch of county road. Nobody gets re-elected on the platform of, "We filled potholes this year." So when budgets get tight, maintenance is often the first thing to get cut or deferred. The Pew Charitable Trust found that maintenance shortfalls across US states exceed $86 billion over a 10-year period. That number represents roads that needed work, got flagged, got scheduled, and then got pushed back, year after year. Because there's always something more visible, more politically appealing to spend money on instead. And this is where something dangerous starts to happen, something that turns a funding problem into a crisis. Every year a road repair gets deferred, the cost of that repair grows. A road that needed a $10,000 resurfacing job 5 years ago might now need a $70,000 full reconstruction. The longer you wait, the deeper the damage goes. Water gets into the cracks, freeze-thaw cycles expand them, heavy trucks grind the surface down, what started as a maintenance issue becomes a full replacement. And full replacements cost orders of magnitude more than timely upkeep. This is called the infrastructure decay curve, and it's ruthless. There's a short window where roads are cheap to fix. Miss that window, and the cost multiplies. State governments across the country have been missing that window consistently for decades. So the backlog doesn't just go linearly, it accelerates. But here's the question nobody in government wants to answer. If everybody knows this, why does it keep happening? Drivers in the United States lose an average of $1,400 per year due to poor road conditions. That's not a government statistic buried in a report. That's real money coming out of your pocket. And here's the part that makes it worse. That damage isn't random, it's predictable. The cities with the worst road conditions have known about those for years. The potholes that blew your tire last winter were on a maintenance list somewhere, waiting for a budget cycle that never came through. You didn't just get unlucky, you got charged for a failure that was entirely preventable. Alignment damage, tire blowouts, suspension wear, undercarriage damage from bottoming out on roads that look more like lunar surfaces than public infrastructure. The cost of bad roads doesn't disappear, it just gets transferred from the government's budget to yours. And it's not distributed evenly. Urban drivers on heavy traffic corridors tend to see the worst degradation fastest. But rural roads often go years without any attention at all because the political weight simply isn't there. Either way, someone is absorbing the cost, and more often than not, it's us. So who exactly is supposed to be fixing this? Because the answer to that question starts to explain why nothing ever changes. America's road problem isn't just about money, it's about who is responsible for what, and the answer to that question is where the whole system quietly breaks down. Take a commute in any mid-sized American metro. You leave your neighborhood on a city street, you merge onto a county road, you hit a state highway, you jump on the interstate. In 20 minutes, you've crossed infrastructure owned and managed by 4 completely separate government entities, each with its own budget cycle, its own maintenance priorities, and its own political pressures. Coordination is inefficient. None of them have a shared view of the corridor you just drove. When something goes wrong on that commute, when a pothole opens up or a section starts to fail, the city says it's a county road. The county says state funding controls the repair schedule. The state says the federal formula doesn't account for their specific needs. And in the meantime, the road keeps crumbling, while the paperwork moves in circles. This isn't bureaucratic laziness, it's a structural design flaw. The system was never built for network-level accountability, and you can't fix a network you don't fully own. Which starts to answer why nobody fixes the problem even when they can see it coming, because there's still one more layer underneath all of this, and it's the one that makes everything else almost impossible to solve. The roads were never built to last this long. Much of the US highway network was constructed in the 1950s and the 1960s under the interstate highway system. Those roads were designed with a lifespan of roughly 50 years. We are now well past that. The infrastructure underneath the surface, the base layers, the drainage systems, the bridges and overpasses were designed for a different era, different traffic volumes, and a fundamentally different weight class of vehicles. Here's a fact that engineers know, but most people don't. Road damage doesn't scale linearly with vehicle weight. It scales with the 4th power of axle load. That means a truck that's twice as heavy doesn't do twice the damage. It does 16 times the damage. Modern freight trucks are heavier than anything these roads were designed for, and there are more of them than ever, and every single one of them is moving across pavement that was already aging before most of the drivers behind those wheels were born. The roads are older than they were ever supposed to get, the loads are heavier than the engineers ever modeled, the funding is frozen in the past, and the people responsible are fragmented across hundreds of separate jurisdictions with no shared incentive to act. Now we can finally answer the question that's been sitting in the background this whole time. If everybody knows this is happening, why does it keep getting worse? Because the people deciding whether to fund maintenance today will not be in office when the bill comes due. A governor who defers $500 million in road repairs this year saves $500 million in this year's budget. The $3 billion reconstruction bill arrives 8 years from now, on someone else's watch. The incentive structure actively punishes doing the right thing and rewards kicking the can. And it has been doing that at every level of American government for decades. It's easy to look at a pothole and see a local failure. A lazy city government, a slow contractor, someone not doing their job. But the pothole is just the symptom. The disease is systematic. It's a funding model built on a gas tax that hasn't moved since 1993. It's a political structure that rewards ribbon cutting over maintenance. It's a fragmented governance structure where nobody owns the whole problem. It's a network of roads older than their design life, carrying loads they were never meant to bear. And it's an incentive structure that makes it rational, politically, to let it all get worse. The $684 billion gap isn't going to close on its own. The decay curve doesn't reverse without aggressive, consistent investment. And every year of inaction doesn't just maintain the problem, it multiplies it. Other countries have faced this crossroads before. Some of them fixed it. Some of them didn't. The ones that didn't are still paying for that decision in crumbling infrastructure and lost economic output generations later. The United States is at that crossroads right now, and the clock built into every road in this country is still running. If you want to understand what's really going on behind problems like this, subscribe. There's a lot more to uncover. I'm Tristan, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.